Hello, everybody. Oh, beautiful. There we go. My name is Chris Quinlan and welcome to Melbourne Musos featured live on another wet Friday. I'll bring that back in a little bit. Oh, as I said, my name's Chris Quinlan. Welcome to the show. There you go. Friday and a wet 6 o'clock. Hey. Oh. Now, what am I doing tonight? I would like to introduce you to a musical technique called Musique Concrète. What Musique Concrète is the use of found sounds, recorded pieces, and repetitive, and with the little thing that I put up this afternoon as the promo for the show. What do these bands have in common? Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Frank Zappa. These beautiful people all have and have used Musique Concrète. So what I'm going to do tonight is take you through a few people these are orchestral percussion patches. There it is. Let me get my trusty phone and I will go and I will read at you. There you go. Musique Concrète, French, is a type of music composition that utilizes recorded sounds as raw material. Sounds are often modified through the application of audio signal processing and tape music techniques and may be assembled in a form of montage. That was dramatic. It can feature sounds derived from recordings of musical instruments, the human voice, and the natural environment, as well as those created using synthesizers and computer-based digital signal processing. Compositions in this idiom are not restricted to the normal musical rules of melody, harmony, rhythm, meter, and so on. The technique exploits acousmatic sound, such that sound identities can often be intentionally obscured or appear unconnected to their source cause. I'll come back to that. A couple of more paragraphs with that. And what happens when we're listening to different kinds of music? Repetitive fingers. Let me first talk about some people here. The first person I'm going to talk about is the leader of King Crimson, Robert Fripp, the leader of King Crimson. He has a little thing called Frippatronics, and what it was in the late 1970s, he would get two reel-to-reel tape decks. I'll find a picture, I'll source it and put it up there. And what happens is that he would take the tape and loop them between the two reel-to-reel tape decks, perhaps feet apart. And what would happen is that I'll take some things out, and what happens is I'll just turn this up a little bit. And he has his guitar. His guitar, he has what's known as a Fernandez sustainer pickup. Now, one of the things you can use on guitar is what's known as an ebow. You get the long violin sounds, you see. So what would happen is you'd have this repetitive things. He's very big on that kind of violin sort of stuff, and he just puts up layers and layers, Frippatronics. And then when things went digital, he went digital too, to a certain degree. So you get that kind of... And you get this kind of business, you see. Beautiful stuff. And it would loop. One of his collaborators is a chap by the name of Brian Eno. And I'll turn this down, and now I'm going to talk about Brian Eno. Now, most people know Brian Eno as a very famous producer, but he started out back in the day, in the early 70s, with being the synthesist for Roxy Music. And he did some fantastic stuff there before he went out on his own. And he started putting out ambient albums like Music for Airports and things like that. And one of the things that he has done of more recently over the last decade is put together ambient apps, of which I use all of them. He made 3. And one of the things is Bloom, and I'll get this up. You won't see it here. I'll put it there. There you go. There's Bloom. Listen, create, listen to a generative composition or create your own. Tap the screen to play notes. All right. There it is there. Ooh. And you can tap. This one's the happy one. I'll repeat. Do you see? There you go. It'll be up better on this camera here, I suppose. But there it is there. That is called Bloom. Okay, it's beautiful. There you go. That's an app. That's that one there. That's Bloom. And there you go. Lovely. Keeps repeating itself. Goes away. And you do it with dots. What you can do then, I'll take that out. And now I'll put up the darker one, which is called Trope. And this is in collaboration with Peter Chilvers. Once again, listen, create. This is a little bit more darker. And that is Trope, T-R-O-P-E. That's what that one is there. Whoa. And here, I was pressing dots for the Bloom. This one you can sort of slide. You see? Whoa. Get that going. And then you put it there. You can play guitar to it, trumpet, sax. Carried away. There you go. And that's Trope from Brian Eno. And the third one, lately I've been using this one the most, is an app called Air. And this is Sandra O'Neill's voice, again with Peter Chilvers, based on the Brian Eno ambient apps, and I'll listen to that. And there you have that. You might hear that in a lot of what I do. I quite love this one. And then you see, I don't know if you can see it, I'll do it there, but I'll put up a picture later on. And what happens with that is that you got this thing, and then what happens is you can conduct. See, look, how I do it. And it's got a combination of the voices and piano. And you have that. That's all very, going on from the 70s with Brian Eno's, really trailblazing ambient business, you see. And there's a little bit of that for you. So go check it out. It's just in your app store. A couple of bucks each. It's good to stick with commerce. You can't do everything free. Look at the world falling apart because everything's free. Oh! Did I just say that or think that? Now with Musique Concrète, I've just talked about Robert Fripp and Brian Eno. Now I'll talk about Pink Floyd. Well, I'm playing far too busy for Floyd. Gummer, late 60s into the 70s. Their crowning achievement in 73 was Dark Side of the Moon. But before then, they were big on Musique Concrète. Gummer, as I said, metal, Adam Hart Mother, obscured by clouds. Oh. And then with Dark Side of the Moon, you've got things like Time, tick tock, 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 tick tock. Who remembers the Total Theatre in Russell Street, the rock and roll cinema? Then it got turned into Billboard there for a long time. But I remember going seeing Pink Floyd live in Pompeii. Oh, Musique Concrète, mate! Careful with that axe, Eugene. Go. Back to the Frippatronics. Robert Fripp, he had one album out called God Save the Queen and Exposure. And then he collaborated with Brian Eno with things like No Pussyfooting. And a few others. And there you have that. And that brings us to, with Brian Eno, here's your link to David Bowie, right? Now, in the mid-70s, David Bowie put out the classic Heroes album. And the trilogy, the Low, anyway. But we're talking about that. And back in the 90s, he collaborated with both Brian Eno and Philip Glass, who I mentioned on the show just a few weeks ago. I do love my continuity. And they did the orchestra. Philip Glass took the themes of Heroes and called it the Heroes Symphony. Then they did a sequel called the Low Symphony, based on David Bowie's themes of the album, and turned it into this beautiful, minimalist, repetitive, ambient piece of music. Please go check it out. I've got the CD in the other room. It's beautiful. Now, when you mention Philip Glass and minimalism, you are also needing to bring in a chap by the name of Steve Reich, who's a drummer, and he has repetitive structures as well. Now, and what happens is when you're using these kinds of things, what can happen is you start implementing it into other things. Now I've got a couple of patches. Now here's your air. And I've manipulated the voice with the sampler by taking it down a few notches in tuning. There you go. Hope you enjoyed that little improvisation there. There you go. So that's what we have, you see. Now what goes on with this is that when you're actually talking about the influence of musique concrète and repetitive structures like minimalism and things like this, you have Robert Fripp, King Crimson. I was saying to a student just the other day about King Crimson, is because they're so big on their improvisations, the die-hard Crimsonians will go to the trouble of just racking up concert after concert because no two concerts are different. Sorry, what am I trying to say? No two concerts are the same. They're all different. I got my words mixed up, oh my Lord. There you go. So that's what happens there, you see. And what happens so much is that Robert Fripp is his own support band. Because what he'll do is he'll just come out on stage, no introductions, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Fripp, or none of that. He just walks out, and people there's footage there where the lights are still up, but the stage is dark, and you don't start hearing Igor. I pressed the wrong button. You start hearing that. And people look up, and there he is in the shadows, being his own support band to his own band. And people start, oh, like that, you see. And it starts becoming that. And it just goes around. That kind of business there. And then what goes on is that he loops, so he adds things in. I've already sort of done this. I'm just reiterating it. And then what happens is that this kind of business really started to take off in the late 1960s, as you know. And now what happens is, think about things like 1969 and Led Zeppelin's second album. And you've got Whole Little Love. And then what happens is you've got John Bonham in the middle section, goes into the psychedelic stuff. But the one constant thing that keeps all the musique concrète and all the samples and all the echoes and everything is Bonham's hi-hat. And then you got Robert Plant going, and then all that stuff. And then, at the same time, you had Frank Zappa's Lumpy Gravy. Actually, it's a little bit earlier. That was more like 67, but it's all at the same time. And what would happen with Lumpy Gravy? Frank Zappa would record the lot. Eric Clapton's on that one, not playing guitar, talking. And what happens is even Zappa's last album that he was recording before he passed away, Civilization Phase 3. And the reason it's Phase 3 is because it was like the third incarnation of Lumpy Gravy. I'm doing a little percussive lumpy graviness. Can you hear the lumps? Now, I'll start wrapping the show up now. And one of the greats is the psychedelia that the Beatles got into, in many ways courtesy of George Martin. Who knows the story where during Sgt. Pepper's he took random bits of tape, chopped them up into sections, threw them up in the air, and re-taped them together. And that became so much of the backing to things like Sgt. Pepper's, Magical Mystery Tour, Yellow Submarine. But the classic is off the White Album. Who remembers Barney with The Simpsons doing a set number? Number 8, bird. Number 8, bird. Number 8, bird. Number 8, bird. Revolution 9. Number 9. Number 9. Yes, White Album. So, let me go over everything. When I'm talking Robert Fripp, it's Frippatronics. Brian Eno, Musique Concrète. A bit remiss of me not to mention Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, who developed such a thing with the synthesis and the tape. And I've got a bit more to read before I take leave of you. The theoretical basis of musique concrète as a compositional practice was developed by French composer Pierre Schaeffer beginning in the early 1940s. It was largely an attempt to differentiate between music based on the abstract medium of notation and that created using so-called sound objects. By the early 1950s, musique concrète was contrasted with pure electronic music based solely on the use of electronically produced sounds rather than recorded sounds. But the distinction has since been blurred such that the term electronic music covers both meanings. There you go. There we are. Edgar Varese got into that in a big way, who was Frank Zappa's favourite classical composer. And so on. Mentioned Carl Stockhausen. I'll go back. Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Philip Glass and Steve Reich. And right of now, because I've mentioned King Crimson, the band Tool, one of the things they love saying is, we just want to sound like King Crimson. And they have a lot of that business, a lot of tape recordings, some of the secret tracks on some of their albums. It goes for 15 minutes and builds up. There's one where some angry man left this long, nasty message on one of their phones, and they put it on the album. So I love and leave you now. I've mentioned Zappa, I've mentioned Beatles, Led Zepp. Even when you've got Jimmy Page doing his violin bow in the middle of Dazed and Confused, the live version, where Dazed and Confused goes out to something like 28 minutes long. That's musique concrète. That's sound effects, Quinlan. I will have this up for you tomorrow sometime. And then on Beloved, Channel 31, Wednesday week, I think. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. A little bit different, but look at who I mentioned. All the greats. Sounds weird, but when you start talking all of these people: Robert Fripp, Brian Eno, Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Philip Glass, Steve Reich, Tool, Beatles, Led Zepp, and Zappa. Get with the program. Take care. Oh, see you in the soup. Oh, ho, ho, ho.